Welcome to Tiny Show and Tell Us, the bonus series where you write in with your favorite science news or factoid and we read your email aloud and then dive deeper. I'm Sam Jones and I'm here with my co-host Deboki Chakravarti.
Hi, Sam. So, when we did this last, we talked about astronomy history, and we also talked about this intense battle between a plant and a butterfly that got kind of violent.
Yes.
And even got a little waspy.
Yeah, there was some impaling and there was some wasp activity.
So a reminder for all of our listeners that if you have a story you'd like for us to cover on Tiny Show and Tell Us, all you have to do is write us an email. You can email us at tinymatters@acs.org, or you can fill out the form linked in the episode description.
Okay, Deboki, I will go first this time. So this is from listener Ev, who wrote in saying, during a particularly miserable period, and Ev is referring to menstruation when he says period, have you ever thought to yourself, are humans the only ones who have to put up with this nonsense? Are we alone in this misery? Because one time, when I was doubled over in pain, wondering this very thing, I decided to look into it and found something amazing about my favorite order of animals, bats. I think that's also fun that you're mentioning that that's your favorite order of animals.
Yeah.
I also am a bat fan. They're very cute. Okay, continuing on with Ev's email. One of some other animals are unfortunately in the same boat. The other animals that have a menstrual cycle similar to humans is the fulvous fruit bat, which has a 33-day menstrual cycle. Due to some similarities with our menstrual cycles between these bats and humans, they may be useful model organisms in studying menstrual disorders in humans. I highly recommend reading this article about it for information, as well as looking at some pictures of these bats. They're very cute. And then Ev puts in a link that we will, of course, share. So, yeah, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, what? Okay.
It is something that I feel like I'm always wondering when I look at animals, because you're like, are we the only ones that have to deal with this? This is dumb.
Right. Yeah, and we've definitely touched on this in past episodes. Like there have been, I think we talked about some whales, but no, actually, we weren't talking about menstruation. We were talking about menopause.
Right. That sounds familiar.
Yeah, no. So this is interesting. I feel like we haven't really gotten into this.
No.
Okay. This is very fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
So Ev put in a link to an article, and in that article, the study that was done, that's where they measured bat menstrual cycles and found that they lasted 33 days. Their bleeding only lasted for 1 day. I will be honest, when I first read this, for some reason, my brain went to 33 days of bleeding, not like when it said a 33-day menstrual cycle. For some reason, my brain went, oh my gosh, that makes no sense. 1 day, that's not awful. I actually wish that this is how it was in humans typically.
Right.
1 out of every 33 days.
Yeah.
Not so terrible. So yeah, I was thinking, oh, that's terrible. Thank goodness that's not the case. I just misunderstood. So we know that there are around 85 mammal species with periods, which is less than 2% of mammals. And I know, Deboki, you were just saying that sometimes you have the thought of, are we the only ones that experience this? But I think in my mind, for some reason, I was feeling the inverse. Like I thought more species had it. I don't know why.
I can understand.
Yeah.
It feels weird for it to be happening
especially
to
with
us
mammals.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Within mammals, I was thinking, it's got to be the majority or most or whatever. But I think also I'll get into why I think I assumed that too. So most who have a menstrual cycle are primates like chimpanzees, elephant shrews, spiny mice, a few bat species. One thing that you found, Deboki, in your research is that other forms of bleeding related to reproduction, that's not a menstrual cycle. And I think in my mind, I'd kind of made them the same thing, which is why, when you hear dogs are going into heat, in my mind, I was thinking, oh, dogs have a menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
No, they don't. That's not what's going on.
Yeah.
In a period, you get bleeding because you have this whole egg cycle to go through. And, when we've had episodes where we've talked about IVF, for sure, we've talked about the menstrual cycle. We've definitely talked about the cycle, but we just haven't gone into other animals that do it too. So in humans and some other mammals, over the course of the cycle, you have estrogen rising that thickens the uterine lining and you develop blood vessels. Then the egg gets released, progesterone goes up, estrogen goes down. And if the egg is not fertilized, or if it's fertilized and doesn't implant, there's no pregnancy. And so then progesterone levels will go down, the lining and vessels will slough off, and you'll have your period. the lining sloughing off is the bleeding. And so one of the big differences between menstruating and non-menstruating animals is that in non-menstruating animals, the uterus doesn't start to change until after the animal becomes pregnant, which I do think we talked about a little bit in the placenta episode. Like, I think we talked about all the changes that were happening before pregnancy happens. It's like so much preparation is occurring.
Yeah.
But with non-menstruating animals, that's not the case. And so basically for us humans, if you get a period, it's because your body was preparing the uterus to get pregnant and then you didn't. And so you shed that lining. I thought it was fun. You found some traits that line up with menstruating animals.
Yeah.
So menstruating animals typically have small litters. Many have one offspring at a time. I guess spiny mice have 1 to 4 pups, which is a lot less than other mouse species, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah. Because 4 still sounds like a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I hear about people, I just had 1 baby and I'm like, this is a lot. Like I can't, when I hear about people having twins, I think, how do you do it? Anything beyond that, I'm like, I die. I don't know. I would just lay on the ground and say, I don't know how I got here.
Right.
But, I mean, not really. I think I would rise to the occasion, but like that's a lot, and props to people who can have more than 1 kid at a time.
Yeah.
It's intense. Yeah. So also with menstruating animals, you have relatively long pregnancies. These are pregnancies that have a lot invested in them. One thing researchers have noticed is that menstruating animals are able to like check the quality of the embryo earlier in pregnancy compared to mammals that don't. And so meaning, for instance, you have things like early rejection of an embryo, where if an embryo is non-viable, the uterus will reject it and then your uterine lining will shed. You'll get menstrual bleeding. It seems like not the case with other mammals that don't have menstruation, that don't menstruate. But I thought this was really fascinating and kind of obvious, but I had never seen it just spelled out for me, is that we don't really know why menstruation happens. We don't quite know. I mean, there's all these theories and things we've talked about where it's like readying the uterus and this and that, like all these things.
Right.
Another theory is sperm storage. So I guess bats can store sperm in the reproductive tract for up to 200 days, which is unreal.
Yeah.
Humans can store sperm for up to 9 days in the reproductive tract. I feel like I've read some things though where it's like, how viable is the sperm at a certain point? Like, I think it's kind of thought that really it's like a few days. I don't know if there's more research on it.
Right.
When I saw 9 days, I was like, that's a lot.
Well, there might be a difference between like how long you can store it versus how long it's viable for.
Like fertilize an egg. Totally.
Yeah.
But still, the fact that it hangs out is really fascinating.
Yeah.
And then scientists who were interviewed for an article that we'll link to theorize that shedding period is a way to shed old sperm and get rid of degraded quality, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah. But again, we don't know. Yeah.
So at the end of the day, we don't know, but this is really so interesting. And thank you, Ev, for writing in, because this is something that I think we've sort of, I don't want to say tiptoed around because it's not like we haven't wanted to talk about it, but I think we've sort of like circled it.
Yeah.
In talking about other related things.
I think we've been like so curious about the pregnancy part of pregnancy that we like, I feel like at this point it's like, how many periods have I had in my life? Like whatever. That I'm used to.
1 billion.
Pregnancy, it's
for
like,
sure.
whoa. But
yeah.
Periods are probably worth learning about because it's like part of how all of it happens.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And not pleasant, truly. I'm just like, oof. Yeah. We're part of that 2% of mammals, man. And it is what it is.
Yep. It sure is. Well, Sam, I have a message from listener Susan, who basically wrote in with a prompt, which is mycotoxin. And then Susan listed out a few examples and like what they're known for. So I'm just going to dive right into mycotoxins because I just like the idea of a 1-word prompt.
Okay.
So mycotoxins are toxins that are produced by fungi. They can grow on crops and foods, and they can affect our health as well as the health of animal like livestock. And one of the things that makes them really tough to deal with is that they're actually really stable, so they can survive a lot of food processing. And they can have really toxic effects. They can cause acute poisoning. They can also cause chronic issues like immune deficiency and cancer. And you can get exposed to mycotoxin by eating foods that have been infected or by eating products from animals that ate contaminated food. So like if you have milk from like an infected animal, like that could be an exposure to a mycotoxin. And scientists have identified several hundred mycotoxins there are a handful that are most commonly known to cause problems for our health. For example, aflatoxins are grown by Aspergillus flavus and Aspergillus parasiticus, and they can damage DNA. They're known to cause cancer in some animal species, and there's evidence that they might cause liver cancer in humans. One of the toxins that Susan mentioned in the letter are known as fumonisins, which is known in particular to be an issue with horses. And I was curious about this, and I found a 2002 news article from Purdue about how that year's corn crop was really bad, in part because it had a lot of fumonisins in it. And the expert that was interviewed blamed it on a combination of heat, drought, and insect damage, because that combo can stress the corn crop out and make it easier for the mold Fusarium verticilloides. I don't know how to say that. But the mold Fusarium basically is able to grow on the corn under those conditions really well and make those toxins. And so I don't like knowing that there are these mycotoxins out there in the world wreaking havoc. But it was when I was looking for more information on the mycotoxins, the thing that really struck me is just how many sources were agricultural sources, because these are so clearly a problem for how we handle our food. And so a lot of what we know about how to prevent these mycotoxins from growing is about how to store our food and make sure to look for food that's not damaged. And so it clearly is a huge issue in agriculture and in how people are able to take care of animals. And then also obviously a huge issue for our health as well. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the human health stuff, links to different types of cancers and things. It's I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah. So there's some other examples, the fumonisins have been connected to esophageal cancer in humans. There's another mycotoxin called ochratoxin A that's made by several Aspergillus and Penicillium species. And in animals, they've seen it cause kidney damage, and it can cause fetal development and immune system issues as well. The evidence in humans is less clear, but I think that there is there's decent evidence for kidney damage. So yeah, there's a lot of different risks that are associated with them.
Right. I wonder, this feels a little bit, there seem to be some parallels here to microplastics in a way where it's hard to at this stage, hard to find conclusive cause effect evidence, but there's so much that we know in terms of correlation or okay, there seems to be a very strong linkage here. And, maybe 10 years from now, there will be enough evidence that, this is actually a cancer causing agent in this particular organ or, whatever it is.
And it definitely sounds even separate from that, we know enough to know that we don't want them. At the very least, they're a huge issue for our crop health and for animal health. And so even if we didn't know that they were a problem for our own health, they would still be a big problem.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they're not good.
Yeah. Not great. It's in the name.
Yeah. Yeah.
Toxins sometimes, is right there.
I mean, I think it's always interesting, but also important to understand mechanism. But sometimes you also are we just know it's bad and we should figure out why. But let's not with those.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's avoid.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you to Ev and Susan for submitting to Tiny Show and Tell Us, a bonus series from Tiny Matters created by the American Chemical Society and produced by Multitude.
You can send us an email to be featured in a future Tiny Show and Tell Us episode at tinymatters@acs.org, or you can fill out the form that's linked in the episode description. And we'll see you next time.